Good morning to all. So we have in the earlier class we have finished Sir Roger de Assizes. Next we'll come on to the next chapter within the reading prose, and that is the Diary of Samuel Pepys. It's not Pepys, actually it's Pepys. So it's been pronounced as Pepys. So Samuel Pepys is, if you have gone through history of English literature, Samuel Pepys is an important figure when it comes to this century. And there are two diarists which were so famous. One was Samuel Pepys and the other one is John Evelyn. These are considered to be diarists. And what do you mean by diarist is that a person who keeps a record of daily happenings as a kind of a diary. You already know what do you mean by a diary writing. So Samuel Pepys, what is the relevance of these writing is because it's more concerned with the age and what has happened. What are the social movements and political movements that has happened during these times, and that is what is given more focus in these diaries written by Samuel Pepys. So the diary of Samuel Pepys, and it is also considered to be one which gives a true account of what has happened in the age. So let's look at the biography of Samuel Pepys. We'll go through it in a more speedy manner because you have the time to read it for yourself. So we'll be only looking at the most important points. So he started his career as an English naval administrator and later became the member of parliament. And he is right now known for us as a diarist, not as a member of parliament or as an English naval administrator. He was born in London and he had his education in University of Cambridge and St Paul's School, which obviously has been mentioned here. Then he began his career as an assistant of his father's cousin, who is Lord Sandwich. Again, Lord Sandwich is also mentioned in this essay, so it is these two characters are important. One is St Paul's School, which is the school, and the other one is his father's cousin, who is Lord Sandwich, which is obviously his uncle. So who was a commander in the English Navy. So with the favor of his father's cousin Lord Sandwich, Pepys was instrumental in getting more contacts in the society. And as a result, within no time, he became a supplier of food and drink to the Navy and thus secured his finances. So, by engaging in business, you know, by by giving food and drink to the Navy, by circulating food and drink to the Navy, he has been able to get much of his finances. So he then went on to become the secretary to the Admiralty, a member of parliament, which at those times is called a secretary to the Admiralty, and the president of the Royal Society. In 1679, he was accused of giving naval information to the French and served a short term in prison. Just like what you call it as Bacon also. Bacon used to espouse so much straightforwardness in his essay, but in his real life he's a bit hypocritical. In that way, Samuel Pepys is also like Bacon. Now, what is important for us in this diary? Pepys kept a private diary which records the information from 1660 to 1669. Why these times are important? If you have learned literature, it has been mentioned that it is the time of Restoration Age. So, covering the momentous period after the restoration of Charles II to the English throne, that after Oliver Cromwell, Charles II came to the throne. After the death of Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector, in 1658, the parliamentary forces had weakened considerably, and as a result, Charles II became the king. If you look at it, Oliver Cromwell was a Republican, and Charles I and II were royalists. They belonged to the royal blood. So Oliver Cromwell believed in more democratic ways. So after the death of Oliver Cromwell, again Charles II came to the throne. So this is the period of or the change. There is a shift in the change or the politics of the period, and that is what is recorded in Samuel Pepys' essays. The arts, particularly the theatre, revived and flourished during this period. The time is also noted for its lack of morality in the courts. That's how you have restoration comedies. You know, Country Wife. You have Ebdi. I don't remember exactly the Wycherley, William Wycherley. and a lot of Collier called this Shaw, I mean, had written an essay regarding the immortality of the stage that is there in this age. Now, Diary of Samuel Pepys, the most famous diary in English literature written in private shorthand, was deciphered and published 100 years after his death. So it was posthumously published, and it is also a graphic eyewitness record of public events of the time. You have the Great Plague of London, which has been mentioned in this diary, uh, and Great Fire of London, which happened in 1666, is also mentioned. Then information on the inside story of Anglo-Dutch War, how it happened, what was the cause of it, etc., are properly explained. And it's more about an honest expression of his own private thoughts and feelings about what is going on in the restoration time. It is considered to be the more energetic time of England. Then the value of the diary is enhanced by the honesty and candor with which Pepys reveals his personality. He does not try to suppress unflattering aspects of his character. That he never, I mean, all through this diary, you never come across any moment where he himself, I mean, boasts of himself. But it's more humanistic. It's more clear that his jealousies and his inferiorities and everything, his marital life and the frequent recriminations with his wife, his infidelity, that, I mean, affairs with other women, is also mentioned. The diary also reveals the texture of everyday food and drink. And again, what we have discussed in Addison also comes in different forms here. Visiting the taverns, visiting the inns, and having conversations with great people is all properly recorded in these essays. Then frequented theaters, taverns, mingled with peoples all over, all walks of life, engaging in entertainments like beer baiting, cockfights, even executions. There were political executions, and obviously for the people of the noble family, these executions are considered to be a kind of a trivial approach. So therefore he emerges as a diligent, shrewd, inquisitive, but at the same time sexually promiscuous man, obviously, who becomes comfortable within his position in the royal society. So let's move on to the essay. So I think you got an idea about who Samuel Pepys is. Now let's look at the essay. Now, before going into the essay, there are a lot of political connection with the I mean, there are a lot of references connected to the English politics, which has been mentioned here. So I'll stop somewhere and explain to you about the same. Now here we have, I think, 4 or 5 diary, I mean, dates, and what has happened on those dates has been mentioned here by Samuel Pepys. But if you look at it, the original book has a collection from 1660 to 1669, and almost covers every month of each year. So it's so extravagant and so industrious. Actually, the whole work itself is big. But here we only have 5 or 6 diary entries to study. So this is the first entry, that is on Monday, 9th January 1660. Okay, so let me read it. For these two, so it has been narrated, since it's a diary, it has been narrated from the point of view of Samuel Pepys. So he says, for these 2 or 3 days, I have been much troubled with thoughts how to get money to pay them that I have borrowed money of, by reason of my money being in my uncle's hands. That Pepys, actually, his uncle's name is Robert Pepys. Now, as you already know, a person who has some problem with debt, he has to engage himself in other works to pay those debts. A proper government, government salary could not afford him to do that. And therefore, what happens to Samuel Pepys is that for 2 or 3 days, he has been much troubled with thoughts. I mean, how to get money to pay them means people whom he has to pay, debtors, people who had borrowed him money. He has to give them the money back. That by reason of my money, because my money that my money might be related to money that he should be giving entirely for his professional work. That is, his duty is to provide for the soldiers, provide goods for the soldiers, because he is a navy administrator. But his real money is being trapped with his uncle Robert Pepys. Therefore he is in a dilemma. He is short of money, he has to pay his debts. I rose early this morning and looked over and corrected my brother John's speech, which he is to make the next apposition. So, what I have done today, early morning, is that I woke up. I was obviously worried about the debt problem. Then I corrected my brother. My brother John is studying in this St. John's school, and apposition. It's apposition means declamation actually. Declamations at St. Paul's schools, in which there were opponents and respondents. It's a kind of a debate competition kind of thing. So declamation. So he was preparing his brother for his declamation, and he was correcting the speech that his brother had written to participate in the declamation, which he is to make. That is, John is to make. There were opponents, and after one second, which he is to make the next deposition. And after that, I went towards my office, and in my way met with Simons, Muddyman, and Jack Price, and went with them to Harper's, and many sorts of talk. I stead still 2 of the clock in the afternoon. So here what happens is that he, after correcting that, he is traveling towards his office, and on the way to his office he meets Simmons. Simmons is William Simmons, who is considered to be the nephew of Henry Shobel, who is a clerk of the House of Commons and House of Lords. Just like we have Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, they used to have House of Commons and House of Lords. Common means people who were representatives of the common people. Then House of Lords is of the king and nobles. So this Henry Shobel used to work as the clerk of the House of Commons and House of Lords. So William Simmons is the nephew of this Henry Shobel, that is this clerk. And next is Muddyman. Now Muddyman, full name is Henry Muddyman. He is a journalist who works in a newspaper called London Gazette. Okay, an English journalist. Then finally you have Jack Price, who is another friend of Samuel Pepys. And Jack Price is the under clerk to the Council of State in 1660. In the year 1660, he is the under clerk to the Council of State. So, even his name is still there in the council records, which is there in England. So, he went on to meet these people and went with them to the Harper's. Now, Harper is a tavern. Okay, it's a kind of a bar, tavern, which is just outside the Whitehall Palace. And Whitehall Palace is important. Later in the essay, it is actually it is the meeting place of almost all the English monarchs in London in 1698. Ignore the age. If till 1698 it was considered to be a big tavern, a meeting place of almost all these monarchs. So he went with Simmons and Muddyman and Jack Price to the Harper's, and many sorts of talks. I stayed till 2 o'clock in the month. So he stayed there till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's almost, it has become noon. And why he says now he was trying to go to the office, but he stayed around with these friends, and that shows that he is a person who is more interested in conversation. He was an extrovert. Samuel Pepys was an extrovert. I found Muddyman a good. Now he explains about his friend Muddyman. I found Muddyman a good scholar, an arch rogue, wanderer. ഒരേ സമയത്ത് നല്ല ആളുമാണ് മോശമാണെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. And owns that though he writes new books for the parliament, yet he did declare that he did it only to get money. So that is, Muddyman is a very good important person. He was not very truthful or straightforward. Why? Because he had very low opinion of the people whom he had who wrote of that is this Mudiman used to write biographies and even considered as a kind of a ghostwriter for certain people. But even though he used to write for them, he doesn't have much much he doesn't give much importance to them, or he neither gives much importance nor gives any respects to these people who are in the parliament. Yet he declared that he did it only to get money. He did it only, that is, he does this job only to get money, not out of any respect or veneration for these member of parliaments, and did talk very basely of them. Not only that, he doesn't have of much importance or significance. He even considered them as derogatory people. Among other things, W. Simmons told me how his uncle Scobell was on Saturday last called to the bar for entering in the journal of the House for the year 1653 these words: "This day His Excellence the Lord General Cromwell dissolved this House," which words the Parliament voted a forgery and demanded of him how they came to be entered. That is, among all the things that we are discussing, suddenly W. Simmons told told Samuel Pepys that his uncle Henry Shobel is in trouble, because on Saturday last, that is, he was called, that is, Uncle Shobel was on Saturday last called to the bar for entering in the journal of the House. That as a clerk, he shouldn't have made an entry into the official journal of the House. And what was that entry? For the year 1653, these words: "This day His Excellence the Lord General Cromwell dissolved this House," that he has entered in the book that in 1653 Lord General, that is Oliver Cromwell, dissolved this House. As I have told you, Lord General Oliver Cromwell actually was a Republican. He was completely against royalists. So when he came to power, he dissolved this House of Lords and House of Commons, etc., and made it more democratic. Okay, and right now England is ruled by the royalist, so they were completely against Henry Shobel making such a mark in the diary, in the books, which words the Parliament. So therefore the Parliament voted or considered this as a forgery from the part of Henry Shobel and demanded Shobel how they came, that they asked how did such an amount of word had come in that record. To that, Henry Shobel answered that they were his own handwriting. No, they thought that somebody might have entered it there. So they asked this Henry Shobel for a clarification, and Henry Shobel said, "Yes, I have done it. I have did it there with the help of my own handwriting, and that he did it by virtue of his office." That is, he did it because he feel that he has the responsibility to do it, and he hadn't committed any vices. It is his duty to make such an entry, and the practice of and it has always been the duty of his predecessors. That is, Henry Shobel therefore can be considered as a man who always sticks to his ideals. He says that it is the duty of us to enter these things into the records. And the practice of his predecessor, and that the intent of the practice was to let posterity know how such and such a parliament was dissolved. That is, posterity. What do you mean by posterity? Posterity means future generations. That Henry Shobel is of the view that the posterity of the future generation should know why or who dissolved this House of Lords and House of Commons, and what was the reason for it, because future generation should know about it. That's the reason why I have done it. But whether by the command of the king or by their own neglect, that is, whether king commanded it to be to abolish it, or whether the people demanded it. Future generation should know about that. Or as the last House of the Lords was, and that to this end he had said under it that it was dissolved by His Excellence the Lord General, and that for the word dissolved he never at the time did hear of any other term, and desired pardon if he would not. dare to make a word himself when it was 6 years after before they came themselves to call it an interruption. So these people were not happy with him suggesting that it was Lord General. Since Oliver Cromwell is dead, he's been called as Lord General by only this person, that is Henry Schobel. It was dissolved by His Excellence the Lord General, and that for the word dissolved, he never at the time did hear of any other term. Obviously, dissolved and dissolved on the way below. You cannot come up with any other word, you know, because it's a parliamentary word. You dissolve a law, dissolve something. You cannot come up with abolishing or anything. So the problem with people is that he has used dissolved the word. He never at the time did hear of any other term. There is no other term that can be used, and desired pardon if he would not dare to make a word himself when it was 6 years after before they came themselves to call it an interruption. That is, obviously he desired pardon if he would not dare to make a word. That is, they were not simply let go of this problem. They want repentance from Mr. Schauber's part. They were so little satisfied with this answer that they did choose a committee to report to the House whether this crime of Mr. Schauber's did come within the act of indemnity or no. That is, whether this person is bound to do that or not, whether he can do it or not, whether he is dutiful to do it or not. That was put under the scrutiny of the House. The House will decide whether Henry Schobel has, entered this thing is right or not. Thence I went with Muddiman to the coffee house and gave $18 to be entered of the club. So after hearing all these things, I accompanied Muddiman to coffee house. And this coffee house is a place where almost all these people, I think we have already done in the Edison, that this coffee house is a place where almost all the writers used to meet, all the dignitaries used to meet. And they have gone to this coffee house. And he had given $18 to be entered of the club. That is, Samuel Pepys has given $18 there. Thence into the hall, where I heard for certain that Monk was coming to London, and that Bradshaw's 2 lodgings were preparing for him. And Monk is a reference to a person called, one second, George Monk. And this George Monk is a Duke of Albemarle. He is also a soldier and also a politician. He plays a major role in bringing King Charles II to the throne after the demise of Lord Oliver Cromwell. So thence back to coffee house and gave $18 to be entered of the club. Thence into the hall, where I heard for certain things that Monk, this supporter of Charles II, was coming to London, and that Bradshaw, that is Bradshaw, I think it's the name of a lodging. Bradshaw's 2 lodgings were preparing for 2 rooms were preparing entirely for only Monk, and thence to Mrs. Gems. Now Mrs. Gems is also another character. Mrs. Jem is Jemima Carteret, who is the daughter of Lord Sandwich. Now, in the introduction, I have mentioned who is this Lord Sandwich. Lord Sandwich is the cousin of Samuel Pepys' father. So, obviously, this girl is also the cousin of Samuel Pepys. This woman, Mrs. Jem. So then he went to meet Mrs. Gems and found her in bed, and she was afraid that it would prove the smallpox. That this Mrs. Gems was relaxing in her bed, and it's not much of a relax because she feared that she is down with smallpox. Okay. Then he went back to Westminster Hall, where I heard how Sir H. Vane, that is Sir Harry Vane, who is a younger and inflexible Republican, he was executed in 1662 on a charge of conspiring the death of Charles I. So he was a kind of a Republican. Okay, Republican obviously is a supporter of Oliver Cromwell. So therefore, he was he was under the charge of treason, and he was executed in 1662. While he is writing this diary, this thing has been happening. Thence back to Westminster, where I heard how Sir H. Wayne was this day voted out of the House. That is, it is the process. Sir H. Wayne, that is Harry Wayne, being a Republican, was voted out of the House and to sit no more there, and that he would retire himself to his house at Raby, as also all the rest of the 9 officers that had their commissions formally taken away from them were commanded to their farthest houses from London during the pleasure of the Parliament. So he, that is Harry, along with other 9 officers, were suspended, and they were asked to go back to their house at Raby and not to come to London anymore. And this is a process which eventually had led to the death of to the execution of Sir Harry Wayne. So these times investigations are going on regarding the contribution of Sir H. Wayne in the assassination, or let's say the death of Charles I. Here I met with quartermaster. Now, what do you mean by quartermaster? A quartermaster is an army officer who provides clothing and supplies for soldiers. Okay, it's called as quartermaster. Here I met with the quartermaster of my lord's troop and his clerk, Mr. Jennings. As we have already know, Samuel Pepys is a navy administrator, so he has to give this quartermaster the supplies and the goods. It is his duty to give all these things to the people. So who is Mr. Jennings? Mr. Jennings is a clerk in Lord Sandwich's army. Again, Lord Sandwich, I have already told you, it is the father's cousin. That is Samuel Pepys' father's cousin. Lord's So he is also a benefactor of Pepys. So Mr. Jennings. So here I met with quartermaster of my lord's troop and his clerk, Mr. Jennings, and took them home and gave them a bottle of wine and the remainder of my collar of brawn. So he invited them home and gave them a bottle of wine, and also gave them the remainder of my collar of brawn. Actually, collar is a kind of a meat from a pig's neck. Okay. And brawn is a pre-cooked meat. Might be following from the heart of a pig or a crow. These all meats can be considered as collar or brawn. So whatever collar of brawn which was left with him, that is the neck part of, the neck part of the pig, okay, or any crow, bird, can be considered as this collar. Collar of brawn was given to the soldier or the quartermaster and so good night. And after that he said good night to them and they left. After that came in Mr. Hawley, who told me that I was missed this day at my office, and that tomorrow I must pay all the money that I have, at which I was put to a great loss, how I should get money to make up my cash, so went to bed in great trouble. So obviously after that there came in John Hawley, and John Hawley is a fellow clerk of Samuel Pepys. Okay, now he came in there and he informed Pepys that you were missing from the office today. Obviously he was spending more time with this Muddyman and the other people, and also with Mrs. Gems. So he never got into his office. And he said, tomorrow you must pay all the money. That is, in the ഓഫീസിലെ കാശ് എടുത്തിട്ടാണ് ഇയാൾ മറച്ചത് ആക്ച്വലി. So obviously ഓഫീസിലെ കാശ് തിരിച്ചു കൊടുക്കാൻ സമയമായി. That tomorrow I must pay. That is, he should pay all the money that he have taken from, which I was put to a great loss. How I should get money to make up my cash, and so went to bed in great trouble. So he was completely confused what to do about the money. How could he, with little time, how could he get that money? So with that trouble upon his mind, he relaxed. He didn't relax. He went to bed. So that's it for today. Next section we will take in the next class. Okay. Bye. Take care.